My name is Rachel Summers. I'm 46 years old. At 7:18 on the evening of my 46th birthday, my sister pointed to a folding chair beside three restless children, a stack of crayons, and a plastic cup with a cartoon dinosaur on it, then said, "Rachel, you won't mind sitting at the kids' table. You're basically here for the free food anyway." The restaurant went quiet around me in that strange way public places do when cruelty lands too clearly to be mistaken for a joke. We were at Bellavita, an upscale Italian restaurant on King Street in Charleston, with arched windows, brass pendant lights, linen napkins, and a bar polished so deeply it reflected the amber glow from the shelves behind it. The room smelled of garlic, rosemary, butter, and expensive wine. My family had booked the private dining alcove near the back, the one with the exposed brick wall and the long walnut table that seated 12. There were 11 adults. 12 adult chairs. And one place card with my name had been moved. Not misplaced. Moved. My name, Rachel, handwritten in gold ink on cream cardstock, sat at the small round table near the service station, where my nephews were already fighting over the blue crayon, and my niece was dipping bread into her lemonade. My mother looked down at her menu. My brother smirked into his water glass. My aunt patted the empty chair beside her and said nothing, though I saw her hand pause halfway to her pearls. My sister Vanessa smiled at me like she had just solved a seating problem instead of announcing my place in the family. "Don't be dramatic," she added. "You always say you love the kids." I did love the kids. That was how they made it sound reasonable. I looked at the long adult table. My ex-husband, Aaron, was there because my mother said he was still family after all those years. His new wife sat beside him wearing a cream silk blouse and the delicate pity of a woman who knew she had been invited to witness something. My cousin Mark had brought a woman he had been dating for 6 weeks. She had an adult chair. My sister's real estate broker had an adult chair because Vanessa said he had basically become family. I did not. On my birthday, I did not cry, I did not argue. I did not ask my family why they had invited me, only to make me smaller in front of strangers. I just looked at the chair, looked at my name beside the crayons, and counted 7 seconds. What they didn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, I had signed a partnership agreement making me a silent part owner of Bellavita. What they did not know was that the restaurant they had chosen to humiliate me in was no longer just a place where I could afford the cheapest pasta. It was one of the first businesses that had ever put my name on paper and meant it. And what they really did not know was that the waiter walking toward our table with a bottle of Barolo had been instructed by the general manager to address me properly the moment he saw me. This is that story. Before I tell you how my family learned that the woman they seated at the kids' table owned part of the room they were mocking her in, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this, after years of being told to laugh along while people cut them down. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, humiliated, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not demand a seat at the table. Some women buy into the building. I grew up in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, in a pale yellow house on Briarwick Lane with a screened porch, a magnolia tree, and a dining room my mother treated like a museum of family hierarchy. My father, Howard Summers, owned a small insurance agency and believed success had a dress code. Pressed shirts, polished shoes, clean car, proper handshake. My mother, Elaine, was a former pageant girl who became the kind of woman who ironed table runners and said things like, "Presentation matters, Rachel." I had one sister, Vanessa, 3 years younger, and one brother, Greg, 2 years older. Greg was the son. That was enough. Vanessa was the beauty. That was more than enough. I was the practical middle child with thick glasses, wide hips before my time, and a habit of reading at family gatherings, because books did not ask me to be more charming before offering me a place. The family hierarchy was not written down, but it might as well have been embroidered on one of my mother's guest towels. Greg was forgiven. Vanessa was celebrated. Rachel was useful. I was the one who watched cousins during adult conversations. The one who cleaned up wrapping paper on Christmas morning while Vanessa posed in front of the tree. The one who remembered grandma's medication, typed dad's invoices, fixed mom's printer, and drove Greg home after parties when he was too drunk to find his own driveway. Whenever I objected, Mom said, "Rachel, don't make everything about fairness." Fairness, in our house, meant everybody accepting their assigned role without making the favored people uncomfortable. The first time my family made me sit at the kids' table, I was 13. It was Thanksgiving. I had started high school that fall and believed, foolishly, that being a teenager meant I had graduated from sticky hands and spilled milk. My mother set the dining room table with her wedding china and placed my card in the breakfast nook beside 4 cousins under the age of 8. I said, "Mom, I'm not a little kid." She looked at me over the gravy boat. "Rachel, you're so good with them." Vanessa, who was 10, sat at the adult table because she had a new velvet dress and my grandmother wanted to admire it. At dessert, Uncle Dennis asked if I was enjoying babysitter seating. Everyone laughed. I smiled because I had not yet learned that swallowing humiliation does not make it disappear. It stores it. The second time was when I was 24 and newly divorced. Aaron and I had married young, too young, after college. He had ambition, charm, and the ability to make every mistake sound like my lack of support. He left after 2 years for a woman from his office named Kendra, though he told everyone we had grown apart. My mother kept inviting him to things because, as she put it, divorce is hard on everyone. At my cousin's engagement dinner, I arrived and found myself seated at the far end of the table beside the bride's teenage brothers, while Aaron and Kendra sat near my parents. When I quietly asked Mom why, she said, "Rachel, don't make this awkward. Aaron feels bad enough." I looked across the table at Aaron laughing with my father over red wine. He did not look burdened by guilt. The third time came when I was 38 and lost my job. I had worked for a boutique event planning company for 12 years, starting as an assistant and becoming operations director. I knew vendors, budgets, permits, floor plans, lighting rentals, catering contracts, linen counts, staffing schedules, weather contingencies, and the exact number of forks needed for a seated dinner of 180 guests with 2 dessert courses. Then the owner sold the company to a larger firm, and my position disappeared under the polished language of restructuring. I spent 8 months freelancing, taking anything I could: weddings, corporate luncheons, charity auctions, rehearsal dinners. I worked nights, weekends, holidays, and one horrible birthday party where a 5-year-old threw frosting at a harpist. My family called it Rachel's little gig phase. Vanessa, who had married a dermatologist and become a luxury real estate agent, told people, "Rachel is between things." Greg said, "You should really get something stable." My father offered to let me answer phones at his insurance office for $12 an hour and called it a lifeline. I did not take it. That decision became proof that I was proud. My symbolic object through all of this was a small brass reservation bell. It had belonged to Bellavita before it belonged to me, though I did not know that when I first found it. Years earlier, after losing my job, I bought a box of old restaurant items from an estate sale downtown because I thought I could use some of them as props for events. Inside were old menus, brass table numbers, a wine key, and a small bell with a worn wooden base. When I polished it, faint letters appeared on the side. B.V. I kept it on my desk. Whenever I booked a freelance job, I tapped the bell once. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to remind myself that even small confirmations counted. Years later, I would learn it had come from Bellavita's original hostess stand when the restaurant opened in 1989. Back then, Bellavita was already part of my private history. My father took clients there when he wanted to impress them. My mother loved it because the servers remembered her sparkling water with lime. Vanessa hosted listings dinners there. Greg proposed to his second wife there, after his first wife finally stopped waiting for him to mature. I had been to Bellavita only a handful of times before the partnership. The first was for my parents' 30th anniversary when I was 27. I was seated near the hallway because the long table was tight. I ordered the cheapest pasta because I had just paid legal fees after the divorce. Vanessa told me, "You don't have to pretend you understand the wine list." The second was for Vanessa's first $1 million real estate closing. My parents threw her a dinner for 12. I was invited as an afterthought and asked to pick up the cake because I lived sort of near the bakery, which was actually 25 minutes in the opposite direction. At the restaurant, Vanessa toasted everyone who believed in me and somehow did not mention the sister who had spent the previous night editing her listing presentation. The third was for my mother's 70th birthday. Aaron and Kendra were there, so was Vanessa's broker. So was Greg's golf partner. I sat beside Aunt Carol near the service station, where servers kept reaching over my shoulder for extra silverware. When the bill came, my father said, "Rachel, can you calculate the tip? You're good with numbers." I did. Then I paid my portion in cash and drove home with garlic on my dress and shame in my throat. The turn in my life came quietly, as most real turns do. At 43, I began working with a restaurant consultant named Marco Leone. He was 58, blunt, widowed, and had built 3 restaurants, sold 2, and rescued more failing food businesses than anyone in Charleston wanted to admit. I met him while coordinating a charity dinner at the art museum. The caterer's refrigeration truck broke down at 4:10 in the afternoon, 2 hours before guests arrived. Everyone panicked. I did not. I called a seafood vendor I knew, rerouted the cold storage through a hotel kitchen, redesigned the past appetizer timing, moved the raw bar indoors, and kept the donor dinner on schedule with only 12 minutes of delay. Marco watched me from near the bar. Afterward, he said, "You know restaurants." I said, "I know disasters." He smiled. Same thing. 2 weeks later, he hired me on contract to audit event operations at several restaurants he advised. I reviewed private dining systems, booking procedures, vendor communication, staff schedules, banquet pricing, and customer experience. It was not glamorous work. It was spreadsheets, floor plans, invoices, and uncomfortable conversations with managers who did not like being told their deposit process was losing them money. I loved it. For the first time, my attention to detail did not make people call me difficult. It made them pay me. Bellavita entered the picture after its founder, Antonio Ricci, had a stroke, and his daughter, Lucia, inherited a restaurant she loved but did not know how to run. The food was still excellent, the dining room still beautiful, but the back office was a tangle of outdated contracts, inconsistent private event pricing, staff turnover, and a wine inventory system that looked like it had been designed during a power outage. Marco brought me in for a 3-month operational review. I spent nights at Bellavita after closing, sitting in the office above the kitchen, reading invoices while the smell of tomato sauce and wood smoke clung to the walls. Lucia Ricci was 41, sharp, exhausted, and fiercely protective of her father's legacy. At first, she did not trust me. "Consultants come in, tell us to cut staff, raise prices, ruin everything," she said. "I'm not here to ruin anything." That's what ruiners say. I liked her. We worked slowly. I built a new private dining booking system. I renegotiated linen and floral contracts. I found a liquor billing error that had cost them $18,000 over 2 years. I fixed the event deposit language. I trained the hosts to ask better questions. I helped Lucia create packages for rehearsal dinners, anniversary parties, board dinners, and small weddings. Revenue improved. Staff stress dropped. Private event bookings increased 32% in 4 months. Lucia began calling me the quiet engine. Marco called me dangerous with a clipboard. Then, in January, Lucia asked me to have coffee before opening. We sat in the empty dining room at 10:15 in the morning while sunlight crossed the walnut tables. The chairs were still upside down from the cleaning crew. The brass pendant lights were off. The restaurant felt unguarded, like a stage before actors arrived. "My father wants me to sell part of the business," Lucia said. I looked at her. "To Marco?" "He doesn't want it. He's tired." "To who?" She folded her hands around her espresso cup. "You." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She did not smile. "Rachel, you understand the restaurant. You understand private events. You understand numbers. You care about the place without wanting to turn it into a brand concept with Edison bulbs and grief." I stared at her. "I don't have that kind of money." "You have some. Marco says you're careful. Marco talks too much. He also says you keep saving everyone else's rooms and should own one." That sentence stayed with me. We structured it over months, not a huge share. 12% ownership with a defined role overseeing private events and operations strategy, paid partly through savings, partly through seller financing, partly through sweat equity converted under the agreement, based on documented improvements already delivered. My attorney reviewed everything. Lucia's attorney reviewed everything. Marco sat in one meeting and told both lawyers, "Do not make this so complicated that the women change their minds." On March 28 at 2:30 in the afternoon, I signed the partnership agreement. Rachel Ann Summers. Owner, 12% member interest. When I signed, I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, I felt still, like some part of me that had been standing in the corner for 46 years finally sat down in a real chair. Lucia gave me a small gift afterward. The old brass reservation bell. The one I had unknowingly bought years earlier had come from a lot of restaurant items sold during Bellavita's storage cleanout before Lucia took over. When she saw mine on my desk during a video call, she recognized it immediately. She found the matching bell in her father's office and gave it to me. "Now you have the pair," she said. I placed both bells on my office shelf, one from the years I survived, one from the place that finally named me. I did not tell my family, not right away. There are people you tell good news to, because they will make it bigger. There are people you delay telling because they will try to make it smaller before the happiness sets. My family belonged to the second group. The birthday dinner was my mother's idea, or so she said. "Rachel, you're turning 46, she told me on the phone 2 weeks before. "We should do something nice." I was in Bellavita's office reviewing a private dining contract when she called. "That sounds good." I was thinking Bellavita. Vanessa says she can get us a good table. I looked through the office window down into the dining room where Lucia was training a new host. "Bellavita?" "Yes, unless it's too expensive for you." There it was. "Soft little cut." I said, "Bellavita is fine." "Wonderful. Vanessa will arrange everything." I almost told her then, not because I needed applause, because it would have prevented the whole evening. Then I stopped. I had spent my life preventing other people from showing themselves. This time, I let them arrange the table. Vanessa called 2 days later. "Mom says you're okay with Bellavita." "Yes." "Great. I'm handling the reservation. I can help." "No offense, Rachel, but you tend to make things very spreadsheet. It's a dinner reservation, and somehow you'd make a folder." I looked at the actual folder in front of me labeled Bellavita Partnership Tax Draft and almost laughed. "What time?" 7. "Who's coming?" She listed them. Mom, Dad, Greg and his wife, Vanessa and her husband Aunt Carol, cousin Mark and his girlfriend Erin and Kendra. I stopped writing. "Aaron?" "Oh, Mom invited him." "Why?" "He's known us forever. He's my ex-husband." "Rachel, it's been 20 years. 22. See? This is what I mean." I closed my eyes. "What do you mean?" "You hold on to things." I looked at the restaurant ownership agreement on my desk. "Yes," I said, "I do." On the day of the dinner, I arrived at Bellavita at 6:30 because Lucia wanted to review a private event estimate before the rush. I entered through the side door, said hello to the kitchen staff, checked the event board, approved a floral adjustment for a rehearsal dinner, and stepped into the office upstairs. At 6:50, Lucia leaned against the office door and said, "Are you really letting your family dine here without knowing?" "Apparently." She studied my face. "Do you want the staff to treat you like a regular guest tonight?" "Yes." "Do you want me to be invisible?" "Lucia, you are physically incapable of being invisible." She smiled. "True. I just want dinner to be normal." She raised one eyebrow. "Families like yours do not do normal. They do hierarchy with bread service." I laughed despite myself. Before I went downstairs, I took the brass reservation bell from my shelf and slipped it into my purse. I do not know why. Maybe because courage sometimes needs an object. Maybe because a woman walking into an old pattern should carry proof that she has left it before. At 7:03, my family was already gathered near the host stand. Vanessa wore a black dress, gold earrings, and the expression of a woman who had assigned herself the role of gracious organizer. My mother wore pearls. My father wore a sport coat. Greg was checking scores on his phone. Erin stood near the bar, older but still carrying the same smile that had once convinced me apologies were coming when they were not. Kendra hugged me. That was almost funny. "Happy birthday," she said warmly. "Thank you." Erin leaned in and kissed my cheek. "You look good, Rach." I stepped back. "You too, Erin." Vanessa clapped her hands once. "Okay, everyone. Table's ready." The host led us toward the private dining alcove. I knew the table. Table 32. Good lighting. Close enough to the service station for efficiency. Far enough from the kitchen for privacy. A profitable table when managed correctly. My place card was originally at the center left. I saw it there for 1 second. Then Vanessa picked it up. "Actually," she said to the host, "we adjusted this." The host, a young woman named Elise, looked confused. "Oh, Ms. Palmer, I have the seating chart from the reservation." Vanessa smiled. "I'm the one who made the reservation." Elise hesitated. I gave the tiniest shake of my head. She stepped back. Vanessa carried my place card to the kids' table. That was when she said it. "Rachel, you won't mind sitting at the kids' table. You're basically here for the free food anyway." The words landed. My mother looked down. My father pretended not to hear. Aaron looked uncomfortable but said nothing, because silence had always been his most consistent trait. Aunt Carol's hand paused near her pearls. And I stood there, 46 years old, in a restaurant I partly owned, watching my family try to seat me beside crayons at my own birthday dinner. The breaking point was not the chair, it was the ease. Nobody looked surprised. That told me the humiliation had been discussed before I arrived. Maybe in the group chat I was not in. Maybe in Vanessa's kitchen while she wrote the place cards. Maybe in my mother's soft voice saying, "Rachel will understand." Rachel always understood, Rachel always adjusted, Rachel always laughed it off so everyone else could finish their meal, not this time. I walked to the kids' table and picked up my place card. My nephew Oliver looked up at me, eyes wide. "Aunt Rachel, are you eating with us?" I smiled at him because none of this belonged to him. "Not tonight, sweetheart." Vanessa sighed. "Rachel." I turned. "What?" "Don't make this awkward." I held up the place card. "Vanessa, it became awkward when you moved my seat." Greg muttered, "Here we go." I looked at him. "No, Greg, here we stop." The word surprised even me. Before anyone could answer, our waiter approached. His name was Julian. He was 26, professional, sharp-eyed, and had been working with me for weeks on improving private dining service timing. He carried a bottle of Barolo in one hand and a tray of water glasses in the other. He reached the alcove, saw me, and stopped. Then, because Lucia had apparently ignored my request for normal in the most elegant way possible, Julian smiled and said, "Good evening, Miss Summers. Lucia asked me to tell you the Ricci party confirmed the Saturday contract, and your notes fixed the wine pairing issue." The table went silent. Vanessa frowned. "Your notes?" Julian looked at her, then back at me. "And welcome to Bellavita, everyone. We're honored to host Miss Summers' birthday tonight." My mother looked up. My father lowered his menu. Aaron's brows drew together. Vanessa gave a brittle laugh. "Miss Summers comes here a lot, apparently." Julian's expression remained polite. "Yes, ma'am. She is one of the owners." A fork hit the floor. It was Kendra's. She whispered, "Oh." I heard the service station quiet behind me. Julian, bless him, did not retreat. He simply set down the water glasses. Vanessa stared at me. "What does he mean, owner?" I looked at her. "It means I own part of the restaurant." Greg laughed. Not because he thought it was funny, because his brain rejected the information. "You own part of Bellavita?" "Yes," my father said. "Since when?" "March." My mother's hand moved to her pearls. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at the place card in my hand. "I wanted to see where you would seat me when you did not know." No one spoke. That was the first silence of the evening that belonged to me. Then Lucia appeared. Of course she did. She wore a dark green suit, her black hair pinned back, and the expression of a woman who had been waiting near the host stand because she understood people better than I wanted her to. "Rachel," she said warmly, "happy birthday." "Thank you." She kissed both my cheeks, then turned to the table. "I'm Lucia Ricci, managing partner. We are very proud to have Rachel as part of Bellavita. She has saved our private dining program, our events calendar, and at least 3 managers from nervous breakdowns." A few nervous laughs attempted to start and died quickly. Lucia looked at the long table. "I believe there has been a seating mistake." Vanessa flushed. "It was just a joke." Lucia's smile did not move. "In restaurants, we take seating very seriously. It tells guests where they are welcome." I nearly closed my eyes. That sentence went straight through the room. My mother whispered, "Rachel, we didn't mean..." I turned to her. "You did." Short, Calm, no decoration. My father said, "Now hold on." I looked at him. "No, Dad, I have held on for a very long time." The children had gone quiet. Oliver still held the blue crayon. My niece Ava looked worried. I crouched beside them for 1 second. "You three did nothing wrong," I said softly. "This is grown-up stuff." Ava nodded solemnly. Then I stood. Lucia gestured toward the adult table. "Rachel, your seat is here." At the center, beside the empty chair that had been mine before Vanessa moved my name. I placed my card there. Vanessa did not sit. "Are we supposed to pretend this isn't incredibly weird?" I looked at her. "You invited my ex-husband to my birthday, moved me to the kids' table, and called me here for free food in front of the staff. I think weird arrived before ownership did." Kendra covered her mouth. Aaron looked at his plate. Greg said, "Okay, enough. It was a joke." I turned to him. "Explain the joke." He blinked. "What?" "Explain what was funny." He looked around, suddenly aware of witnesses. Julian, Lucia, Elise near the host stand, a busser pretending to polish silverware, Aunt Carol watching with open approval. Greg said nothing. I nodded. "That's what I thought." Lucia leaned toward me. "Would you like the party to continue?" It was a real question. For the first time all night, someone asked what I wanted. I looked at the table, my family frozen in their assigned discomfort, my mother ashamed. Vanessa furious, Aaron exposed by his own silence. My father realizing that the daughter he called impractical had become a stakeholder in the restaurant he bragged about to clients. Then I looked at Aunt Carol. She smiled faintly and pulled out the chair beside her. "Birthday girl should eat," she said. So I sat, not because they deserved dinner. Because I did. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been invited somewhere, only to be reminded that people expected you to be grateful for crumbs, then you know exactly what that table felt like. It was not about a chair. It was about years of being placed wherever everyone else felt comfortable putting you. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what moment made you stop accepting the seat they assigned you. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. Dinner was the strangest meal of my life. Julian served with flawless calm. Burrata with roasted tomatoes. Arancini. Caesar salad with shaved Parmesan. Handmade pappardelle. Branzino. Osso buco for my father, because Vanessa had ordered it for him before asking whether he wanted it. Wine appeared, but more slowly now, because nobody trusted themselves with too much of it. For the first 20 minutes, no one knew how to speak. Then my mother tried. "Rachel," she said softly, "I really wish you had told us." I set down my fork. "Why?" She blinked. "So we could celebrate you." I looked at the kids' table. "You had the chance." Her face crumpled slightly. Vanessa snapped. "That is so unfair." Aunt Carol finally spoke. "No, Vanessa, it is very fair." Everyone turned. Aunt Carol was my mother's older sister, 72, widowed, and usually quiet in the way women become when they have spent decades being told they are too much if they finish a sentence. She took a sip of water and placed the glass down carefully. "I have watched this family put Rachel wherever it was convenient since she was a child," she said. Tonight, she simply let the room tell the truth. My mother whispered, "Carol." "No, Elaine, I'm tired too." That sentence did something to my mother's face. It made her look older, not weaker, just less protected by habit. Aaron cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, Rachel, congratulations. That's impressive." I looked at him. "Thank you." He looked relieved. I added, "And it was not your place to be here tonight." His relief vanished. Kendra looked at him. Aaron said, "Your mother invited me." "I know, and you accepted." The table went quiet again. Kendra stood halfway. "I'm sorry, Rachel, I didn't think about how strange this was. I should have." I nodded. "Thank you." Aaron stared at his wife as if she had broken formation. That was not my problem. My father tried next. "So what exactly does part owner mean?" Vanessa groaned. "Dad." "No," I said. It's a fair question. I explained simply. 12% member interest. Operations role. Private dining strategy. Seller financing. Sweat equity. Legal agreement. No drama. No exaggeration. My father listened with an expression I had rarely seen from him. Respect was too strong a word. Recalculation was more accurate. You did this yourself? Yes. With what money? My savings. My work. My documented improvements. Greg said, must be nice. I turned to him. What must be nice? He shrugged. Getting lucky. I smiled, but not kindly. Greg, lucky is when you get a parking spot in front of the restaurant. Building revenue, renegotiating contracts, and buying into a business after 20 years of operations work is not luck. Aunt Carol murmured, Amen. Vanessa pushed her chair back slightly. I can't believe everyone is acting like I committed a crime. I moved a place card. I looked at her. No. You expressed what you thought I was worth. Her eyes flashed. That is not fair. You moved me to the kids' table at my own birthday dinner. You love kids. You invited my ex-husband. Mom did. You called me here for free food. It was a joke. Then Greg should explain it. Greg stared at his plate. Vanessa's mouth tightened. The most satisfying part was not that she had no answer. It was that I no longer needed one. At 8:40, Lucia returned with dessert. Not the cake Vanessa had ordered. A different one. A lemon olive oil cake with blueberry compote. The dessert I had once mentioned was my favorite during a staff tasting. On the plate, written in dark chocolate, were the words, Happy birthday, Rachel. No joke, no correction, no smaller place. Julian set it in front of me, then placed a small brass reservation bell beside the plate. My bell. Lucia must have taken it from my office shelf. I looked up at her. She smiled. Every owner should ring once on her birthday. My eyes burned. I picked up the bell and tapped it lightly, clear, bright, small. The sound carried through the alcove. My family sat silent around me. For once, nobody laughed. After dessert, the bill came. Julian placed it discreetly beside me. Vanessa reached for it with the kind of authority she used to sell houses she did not own. I've got the organizing, she said. I put one hand over the folder. No. She froze. I opened it. The family dinner had been comped for my birthday under partner discretion, except for alcohol beyond the house-selected wine. Lucia had written a note at the bottom. Rachel, your table, your call. I looked at Vanessa. The meal is covered. Her eyes narrowed. By the restaurant? By me. My mother said, Rachel, no, that's too much. I almost laughed. Too much. When I was humiliated, I was dramatic. When I paid, it was too much. No, Mom, I said. It is my birthday, and I am choosing to end the evening cleanly. I paid the remaining bar charges myself because I did not want anyone using a credit card receipt as a claim later. Then I stood. The others rose awkwardly. Near the entrance, my father paused beside me. I didn't know, he said. I looked at him. You didn't ask. He nodded once. Not an apology, not yet, but the first crack in the old certainty. My mother hugged me too tightly. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I stepped back. That would have meant more before Julian said owner. Her eyes filled. I know. That was something. Vanessa did not hug me. She stood near the host stand with her arms crossed. You embarrassed me tonight. I looked around Bellavita, the bar, the walnut tables, the staff moving with quiet skill. Lucia speaking to a guest near the door. My brass bell in my purse. No, I said. You arranged the seating. Her mouth opened, then closed. I walked past her into the Charleston night. The aftermath unfolded slowly, which is usually how family systems break. Not with one explosion. With repeated moments where the old script no longer works. The next morning, Vanessa posted nothing. That told me more than a post would have. She lived online. A family birthday dinner at Bellavita should have been 3 stories, 2 selfies, and a caption about celebrating my sweet sister. Silence meant she did not know how to frame it without looking like the villain. Greg texted me at 10:06. Guess we're all supposed to bow now? I replied, number. Basic respect is fine. He did not answer. My father called Sunday afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. Rachel, it's Dad. I want to talk about Friday. I should have said something. I didn't. That was wrong. Call me when you want to. I listened twice. Then I saved it. Not because I trusted him fully. Because documented apologies count too. My mother came by on Tuesday with a potted orchid, which was her language for discomfort. She stood in my living room, looking at the shelves where both brass bells sat side by side. I remember the first one, she said. From my desk? You used to ring it when you got freelance work. I was surprised she knew that. Yes. She touched one leaf of the orchid. Your father and I used to worry about you. I know. No, she said, not kindly. We worried in a way that became judgment. I did not rescue her from the sentence. She continued. Vanessa always looked easy. Greg always needed help. You seemed capable, so I treated you like capability meant you didn't need defending. I looked at my mother for a long moment. Capable people still feel humiliation. Her eyes filled. I saw that Friday. You saw it before Friday. She closed her eyes. Yes. That was the first real apology my mother ever gave me. Not perfect, not complete, but honest enough to sit down beside. Vanessa took longer. For 3 weeks, she told relatives I had set her up. According to her version, I secretly bought part of Bellavita just to trap her into looking bad at my birthday dinner, which would have required either psychic ability or a level of dedication even I did not possess. Aunt Carol handled that beautifully. She replied in the family group chat, Vanessa, most traps do not require you to bring your own cruelty. No one knew what to do with that. I sent Aunt Carol flowers. Aaron sent an email. It was long. Too long. Men who fail you often write essays when a sentence would do. He apologized for attending the dinner, for not recognizing how inappropriate it was, and for, quote, ways I may have contributed to your family not valuing you during our marriage. May have. I did not answer. Kendra wrote separately. Just one line. I'm sorry I sat at that table. I replied, thank you. That was enough. At Bellavita, nothing changed, and everything changed. The staff knew, of course. Restaurant staff always know. But nobody mocked me. Nobody pitied me. Instead, Julian began calling the private alcove table Rachel when entering notes into the event calendar, which I pretended to hate and secretly loved. Lucia told me not to let family embarrassment interfere with the Saturday Ricci party contract. Work is work, she said. Are you comforting me with capitalism? Yes. Is it helping? A little. Marco heard the story from Lucia and called me. You let them sit through dinner? Yes. You're nicer than I am. I wanted dessert. Good reason. He paused. Then he said, proud of you, kid. I was 46 years old, but I accepted kid because Marco had earned it. The partnership grew stronger that summer. Private dining bookings increased again. We hosted 2 rehearsal dinners, a nonprofit board retreat, a 50th anniversary party, and one 80-person corporate reception that nearly broke the kitchen until the new timing system saved us. One evening in July, I stood in the private alcove after closing, checking chair spacing for the next day's luncheon. The kids' table from my birthday had been removed weeks earlier, but I could still see it if I let myself. Small round table. Crayons. My name in gold ink. I took out the brass bell and rang it once. Not because I was sad. Because I remembered. Remembering is not the same as staying wounded. Sometimes, it is how you measure distance. Vanessa finally came to Bellavita in August. Not for dinner. For a listing meeting. She had a client interested in hosting a closing celebration and apparently could not avoid the restaurant forever. I saw her from the office window before she saw me. She stood near the host stand in a white blazer, looking slightly less certain than usual. I went downstairs. Vanessa. She turned. For a second, she looked like the sister I had known as a child, caught with my sweater in her backpack and already preparing to cry first. Rachel. Meeting for the Pritchard party? Yes. Elise will show you the private room. She glanced toward the alcove. I didn't know you'd be here. I work here. I know. That was new. She followed me to the small private room near the courtyard. I showed her the seating layout options, minimums, menu tiers, wine pairings, deposit requirements, and cancellation policy. I was professional. Not warm, not cold, professional. When the client stepped away to take a call, Vanessa said, "You're really good at this." I looked at the floor plan. Yes. She swallowed. "I'm sorry about your birthday." I waited. She continued, "I'm sorry I moved your seat. I'm sorry I made the free food comment. I'm sorry I invited Aaron through Mom and pretended it wasn't a big deal. I wanted you to feel small because I didn't know you had become someone I couldn't place." It was the first time Vanessa had ever named her motive without wrapping it in injury. I looked at her. "Thank you for telling the truth." She nodded. "Do you forgive me?" There it was, the question people ask when discomfort starts costing them. "Not yet," I said. Her face fell. I continued, "But I'm less angry than I was." She nodded again. "I'll take that." "Good. Also, the Pritchards will need to confirm by Friday. We don't hold rooms without deposit." Vanessa blinked. Then, to her credit, she smiled faintly. "Of course." That was how we began, not with hugs. With deposit policy. My family did not transform overnight. My father still asked questions that sounded like audits. My mother still tried to soften Vanessa's behavior with phrases like, "She didn't mean it that way," before catching herself. Greg still made sideways comments, until one Sunday when Aunt Carol said, "Gregory, jealousy looks terrible with that shirt," and he left early. But the old seating chart had been destroyed. Not by revenge. By revelation. They could no longer pretend I was the family failure after the waiter called me owner in the restaurant where they tried to humiliate me. They could dislike it. They could minimize it. They could say they always knew I was talented, which they absolutely had not. But they could not unhear Julian's voice. "Ms. Summers. Owner." Sometimes one public title corrects decades of private dismissal. On my 47th birthday, I did not let my family plan anything. I hosted dinner at Bellavita myself. Not a large one. Lucia, Marco, Aunt Carol, my friend Paula from work, and 3 women I had met through a small business mentorship group. My parents were invited for dessert only because that was what I had the emotional capacity for. Vanessa sent flowers and did not attend because she said, "I think I should earn next year." I respected that. At 9 o'clock, after the plates were cleared and the last espresso poured, Lucia brought out lemon cake again. Julian placed the brass bell beside it. This time, I rang it without tears. Everyone clapped once. Not wildly, just enough. After dinner, Aunt Carol walked with me to the front door. "You know," she said, "your grandmother would have loved this place. She hated restaurants with small portions. She would have loved that you owned the room." I looked back at Bellavita, the lights, the bar, the staff laughing near the kitchen. The private alcove, reset for the next day with every chair exactly where it belonged. "I don't own the room," I said. Aunt Carol smiled. "No, but you own your place in it." That was better. The final lesson of this story is not that money earns respect. It does not. If money could fix family roles, rich people would all be emotionally healthy. And we know that is not true. The lesson is that people who benefit from underestimating you often keep doing it until reality interrupts them in public. They do not always hate you. Sometimes they need you small because your growth would force them to revise themselves. My family needed me to be the struggling one, the useful one, the woman near the service station calculating tips and laughing at old jokes. Vanessa needed me at the kids' table because if I belonged at the adult table, she would have to admit she had been moving my name for years. My parents needed me to understand, because understanding was cheaper than defending me. But I am not cheap anymore. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not at a table. I still love my family, but I no longer let love assign my chair. I no longer accept humiliation because someone says it was a joke. I no longer confuse being useful with being valued. And when people invite me somewhere now, I ask myself one question before I go. Would I still attend if I knew nobody there would recognize my worth? If the answer is no, I stay home. If the answer is yes, I bring myself fully. And sometimes, if the restaurant happens to be mine, I bring the bell. My family made me sit at the kids' table at my own birthday. Then the waiter called me the owner. And for the first time in my life, I did not have to fight for a place at the table. The room corrected them for me. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been placed at the emotional kids table for years, even as adults. Even after building careers, homes, businesses, and lives, nobody bothered to notice. If Rachel's story reached you, I hope you remember that their seating chart is not your identity. You are allowed to outgrow the place people assigned you, quietly, completely, and without asking permission. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the moment proof finally takes a seat. So tell me, if your family humiliated you at your own birthday because they thought you were a failure, would you explain yourself, or would you let the waiter tell them exactly who owned the room?